Hello, my name is Yvonne. I am Hey.Miss.K on Instagram and Hey Miss K on Facebook. My channel is all about getting back to the basics of good online teaching and helping you through the hiring process with Outschool and just helping you with teaching online. So today's video is basically my lesson planning 2.0. So I already have a video on how to lesson plan if you want to learn, maybe make your lessons better, or just increase your bookings if you're an online teacher and working on Outschool. So I'm going to take you step by step through the lesson planning process and really dive a little deeper into how to create those great lessons that parents and students are gonna wanna come back more for. So that's today's video. If you're thinking, what is Outschool? What is she talking about? I do have a video that I will link up here, and it's called What is Outschool? But basically it's a teaching platform, and you can compare it to Etsy. Parents come on Outschool to look for teachers to teach certain subjects, but really the opportunities are endless because you can teach anything. You can teach, like how to tie your shoelaces for the little ones. You can teach knitting and cooking. You can teach math, whatever you want, whatever your passion is. But like I said, I have another video on that. And if you do want to teach on Outschool and you would like a mentor, you can just use my link in my description box. I will also leave the lesson plan template that I have that I'm going to be using today in the description box as well. Everything is free. So if you're on your phone, you're going to have to look at the title and click the little arrow to see the description box. And then if you're on a computer, you should be able to just see the first few sentences and then click show more, and then you'll see everything else, all of my links and all of my things that I have in there for you. All right, so let's get going. So I have the lesson plan outline for you, like I said, available. And if you are teaching on Outschool, this is more than what Outschool will require for you to submit when you are submitting a lesson. But I think it's really important, especially when you're starting out, to really think everything through so that when you are teaching, you have everything thought out. You know exactly what you're going to do if plan A doesn't work. You will have clear ideas of what your lesson is about, and for parents too. So it's really good to actually think everything out like I have here in this lesson plan. And if you're not teaching in Outschool, but you're still teaching online, this is still for you. You can still use this. So I'm going to start right at the top with the title. The title is actually really important, especially on Outschool, because it is a marketplace. Parents will be using the search engine and they will be looking for classes. And although you might have a fun title like, Adventure Time with Scooby the chicken, okay, nobody's going to look for that when they're looking in the search engine. They're going to be looking for math classes, or maybe they might be looking, they might type in early, or just phonics, or maybe just ABCs, like letters, alphabet recognition, things like that. Those are keywords that they're going to be using. So those are words that you want to also use in your title when you're going to put it on Outschool. Now, if you're not working on Outschool, it's not as important. But if you are, use searchable keywords in your title. But again, this is something that you can change often. So you might have an idea and then change again later. Age range. So age is really important. Again, on Outschool, they highly suggest not going above 5 years. And I don't even know if you can, but you can basically say, okay, 5 to 10-year-olds can join my class. But it's not really recommended to always stretch it to 5 years, because if you're saying a student that is 5 and a student that is 10 can be in the same class, you're basically saying that a kindergartner and a grade 4 student are taking the same class with you. And depending on what you're teaching, that gap, it might be too much. And so some parents don't like big gaps because exactly that. They're like, my grade 4 doesn't want to be taking a class with a kindergartner, right? They don't have the same kind of ways of maybe interacting with others, and it's just maybe not something that they're looking for. So, and vice versa, same thing, like a little kindergartner might feel intimidated by the older students. So you want to keep it between 3 and 4 years, I would suggest. Okay, and then you also have to think about the length. How long do you want your class to be? Again, on Outschool, you decide. Do you want it to be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever you want, you decide. And then, so basically after that, the most important thing about when you're lesson planning is to think of the objective of your lesson. What are you trying to convey, and what, more importantly, are your students going to be able to do after your class? So when you write out your objective, it needs to be student-centered. It's not I will teach this, it's students will be able to do this. Students will be able to have, students will have mastered this. If it's just a one-time class, they probably might not, they most likely won't master something, but maybe if you have a multi-day class, by the end of it, they might have mastered something if that's your goal, if that's the objective. So just remember that your objective of your lesson is, I want my students to be able to do this. I want my students to be able to do that. That's kind of your objective. And then the whole lesson is going to be about how you're going to help your students reach that objective. And it doesn't always have to be a huge objective, and you might have many things that you're trying to do, but you really need to basically focus at least on one thing, so that if at the end of the lesson they reach that one thing, even if they didn't get the other stuff that you put in that's extra, at least they've been able to achieve that objective that you have set. And then the other thing that I put in there after objective is how. How are you going to help those students, your students, get and reach that goal and reach that objective? And so you have to think about your students. You have to think about that you're going to be getting all kinds of students. You're going to be getting auditory students, students that can hear and remember. Others are going to be visual. They need to see to understand. You're going to have others that are more kinesthetic. They need to move in order to stay engaged and be able to really grasp what you're teaching. So you have to think about all your students, and the more you can cater to each student, the better. The more parents and students will enjoy your classes. If you're only thinking about one type of student, then you're not thinking of the others, and the others might get lost in your lesson. So make sure that you're thinking about the different kinds of students that you will have, and then think of at least 2 or 3. And then try and find a way, at least at some point in your lesson, to make sure that those students are able to show or are able to participate in your lesson. Okay, so to give you an example, let's say you want to do show and tell. You like the little ones, you're comfortable with them, and you want to do a show and tell because you know they love to speak and they like to talk and show their things. That's excellent, that's fine. But now think of a goal. Like, what is the goal? Is it just to show their stuff? It could, like, okay, so what? Is it to actually use adjectives? Maybe you want to make a show and tell and teach them how to use an adjective when they describe their thing. Maybe it's actually it's to learn how to take turns when speaking, right? If you have the little ones, that's something that they still need to learn, is that they need to raise their hand, or they should wait for a cue that it's their turn, or whatever it is. So even though it's show and tell, you should still have that goal, and parents are going to like that because you're actually making sure that you're teaching something instead of just letting them speak and letting them share, right? Like, you're taking it to a new level. So that's kind of like what I'm trying to say, is that you should have an objective in your lesson, even if it's not like a very like high-level lesson. You still should have a goal for it, and then think about how you're going to do that. Are you going to be modeling first, or are you going to be using a slideshow? Are you going to be having them move around? Are you going to use modeling clay? Whatever it is, make sure that you have at least 2 or 3 ways that students can engage in your lesson. And it's really important that they are engaged in your lesson, because you have to hold their attention through a screen. So make sure that you have something for them to do, and not just lecture the whole time, or just slideshow after slideshow without having them without giving them a chance to engage in your lesson. So just think of the ways that you can actually reach out to them and get them to participate and have fun in your class. Okay, let's keep moving. So the next thing is materials. You do need to think about the materials that you want your students to have, if any. But I do want you to be mindful of what you're asking your students to bring to class. Even if it's as simple as a handout, if you're sending them a handout, do they really need this handout in order to follow along in your class, or is it optional? So the more you're asking of parents to bring and students to bring to class, the more you're kind of maybe shutting others out that don't have access to a printer, don't have ink, or just don't have the materials that you want them to have. Now, if it's an art class, again, art classes, you can use simple things, or you can ask parents to actually go out and get specific things. It really depends what you're going to be teaching. But all of my handouts are optional because I don't want parents to see, oh no, we absolutely need this handout for our child or our learner to follow along. We can't, so I guess we'll look for another class. Mine are optional. They can follow along with the handout if they want to. Sometimes it's just coloring so they keep their hands busy. But then if they don't have that, that's fine. I tell them you can just use a blank sheet of paper. You can use a whiteboard, or I'll have something that they can do either verbally or physically during class if they don't have the handout. So I am very aware that not everyone is going to bring all the materials, even if it's listed, even if I've told them and reminded them, it's just gonna happen. You're going to have students that are like, I'm sorry, I don't have it, right? So you wanna make sure that you still have something for them to do and for them to enjoy your class. All right, so you have your objective, you know how you're going to teach it, you have your materials thought out. Now, what is your hook? You need to hook your students into your lesson. So after saying hello and like some short greetings, how are you going to start your class? How are you going to hook them in so that they are interested in what you're going to be doing? It doesn't have to be very long. It shouldn't be very long actually, but it should be something that's interesting. So you can start with a game, a quick little game of something. You could start with a funny video. You could start with a picture and ask them all to take a good look at the picture. Maybe there's something they need to find. You can start with a funny GIF or GIF, whatever you want to call it, just something to kind of get them either laughing or interested or just curious about your lesson. So that's something that I forgot to mention in my previous video about my lesson planning, is that you should have this fun hook, or even if it's not fun, but interesting, something that gets their attention to get your students starting and interested in your lesson. Okay, and then you also need a brain break. At some point in your lesson, you're going to need to give them a brain break. So, and again, it all depends on the type of class that you're teaching, but if you have a lot of content, or if you're introducing a lot of things, well, at some point you're going to need to give them a break from everything. And again, that could be, like I just mentioned, it could be a quick game, it could be something funny that you can laugh about, it can just be a little review of what you've seen but in game format, or in maybe it could be something that you say and the students have to raise their hand and guess quickly, or whatever it is, but you want them to just have a moment of, okay, I've learned all this, now I get to just kind of relax or review quickly and then we move on, right? So you do want to give them a quick little break, just a minute or two to have some fun with you, make those connections so that they like you, enjoy you as a teacher, and then you keep moving on and hopefully they'll come back for another lesson because you took that time with them. And I also put in your closing. So how will you finish your lesson? Again, it should be something that is memorable, something that they're going to remember. Oftentimes, your students remember the last part of your lesson. For me, it's very, very true. One of my classes is a geography class, and I always put my fun facts at the end. And often when I ask them what was your favorite part about this country, or about what we learned today, talked about today, they will oftentimes tell me the last thing that I taught them, which is my fun facts. So it just goes to show how important that is. And you do want them to remember something, and that's how you can close. You can ask them to share their favorite thing. You can share some fun facts that they didn't know about before the lesson or during the lesson, that you're hey, by the way, did you know this? Because you want them to remember it and then go and talk to their adults and say, guess what? This da 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 da. Did you know that? Blah 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 blah. Or hey, today I got to share my favorite thing, or whatever it is. So then the parent sees, oh, hey, he enjoyed that class or she enjoyed that class. And then hopefully they'll take another class with you. So you do want to close it up in, again, a fun way. So it can also be a game. It can be a review game of everything you've done, but still it's a game. So you don't want to just say, okay, guys, that was it for today. Goodbye. You do want to just kind of finish it up in a fun way. All right, so I also put in extension ideas. So this is for when your class goes faster than you expected. And it might happen, especially if your class, you know, is meant more for like 3 to 4 students, but you've only got one or only 1 or 2, or they're quiet and they don't say much. What can you do either at the end of class or even throughout the class? What can you add to your lesson if things are going quickly? Like, I also teach French, so I might have my goal for my lesson, but I can easily add more. I can ask about color. Maybe, you know, today we're working on numbers, and the numbers are all in different colors. Well, I might ask, does anyone know any of these colors in French? No? Well, let's see. Okay, well, where's number 3? What color is it in English? Red? Okay, well, this is how we say red in French. It's not my goal of the lesson, but I'm giving more value to my lesson, and extending that time with them. And if they don't remember, it's okay. But I did give some value to my lesson by extending that way. And I can do it at the end, or like I said, throughout the lesson. The next thing is it goes hand in hand, is your plan B or C. I like to have plan B and C. Like the other day, I had to go to plan D, actually. So it's really important that you think, okay, what if they don't have the handout? What if even for your own, like for your side, what if my computer dies? Do I have a second device that I can teach from? What if my power goes out? What if they don't have the materials, right? You have to think of those things because they will happen. So I had a craft that I wanted to do, very simple, and half my students didn't have the handout. And I said, that's fine. You can just draw the circles and cut them out. And then some of them didn't even have a paper and pencil. So I was like, that's fine. They didn't have scissors. I said, that's fine. You can just draw this animal, this crab. And they didn't have a pencil or paper. So I was like, that's fine. So see, I'm already at plan C. They instead talked to me about the crab, right? So it was a way of I had to think of a way that they can also be, you know, participating in class, even though they didn't have the stuff to make the craft. So just be ready that things are going to go wrong. And if you have it thought out, then you won't be scrambling for like, oh no, what should I do? What should I do? You have it written here, right? It's already there. You've already thought about it. So that's why I put it in there. Okay, and I also gave you a space for prior knowledge. And this is important that you write in your description, especially on Outschool. If you need your students to have basic information or basic level of understanding a language or whatever it is, you need to let the parents know so that it's fair to them. Not that they come into your lesson and say like, whoa, I thought this was a beginner's class. I didn't think my child had to know anything. You do want to let them know. It's very important, and you should write it in your description. You might even want to send them an email before class or whatever, a reminder, just to make sure that they know what to expect when they join your class. If they don't need any prior knowledge, that's fine too. And you just say that no prior knowledge required. You should also think about your classroom expectations. How are you going to run your class? What are you going to tell your students? Do they have to raise their hands? Do they have to touch their nose instead? Do you leave everyone unmuted, or do you want everyone to stay muted and you will unmute them individually? Whatever it is, make sure that you tell your students at the beginning of class, because every teacher has their own way of teaching. So you want to have that set at the beginning of class and remind it throughout class. You can also think about if your lesson relates to a specific curriculum. So maybe the state standards or competencies or whatever it is. You can put that and tell the parents, hey, by the way, I'm following this, or my lesson relates to that or is connected with this. Some parents are going to love that and think this is excellent, this is what I'm looking for. And other parents are going to say, nope, we want something that's outside of the box, or we want something different, and they don't want that. So it's up to you if you actually want to think about that. You can easily just, again, Google online and look for those state standards if you want to. Or I live in Canada, so in Quebec we have competencies, so that's all up to you if you want to or not. Then I also gave you some space for adjustments. So once you've taught your class, what are things that you can change or do better for next class? Now, I can think of several classes that I've changed so many times. Like, I think my first class that I taught at Outschool, I think I've changed 7 times already, because every time I was unsatisfied with certain things. So I went in and changed it again and made made it better for the next time. And so I just wanted to give you some space for that. And then just some notes for yourself that you can, either the students' names or whatever you want to remind yourself of. And then at the back, at the very back, you also have a whole page to write everything out if you want to, minute by minute. Like if you want to give yourself 5 minutes at the beginning of class to have your little introduction done and classroom expectations, and then you might say, okay, and then from 5 to 15 minutes, I'm going to be doing this, or students are going to be doing that. And then, so you can just write everything out so that you know time-wise how long you think it's going to take. So don't try and pack in too much, because you're going to have talkers that want to say everything and participate a lot. And then you're like, oh my gosh, my time. So that's why it's good to have plan B and C. So if you are short on time, what can you do? What can you skip? Or if you are trying to extend, then again, what can you do to do that? So just have, like I said, have your lesson thought out. You might not need it for every single lesson, especially once you start creating them. But to begin with, or if you want to, if you're not seeing as much a success on Outschool as you had hoped, maybe try writing everything out, think everything through, and see if that will bring some more greater success for your classes, and parents will re-enroll their child or adults, you know, whoever is taking care of the children. So I hope this was helpful for you. And like I said, I'm leaving this template, it's free, in the description box. I have several tutorials on how to use Zoom for Outschool, how to use Canva. I use Canva all the time. It's how I create my lessons. And so I will link all of those in here in this video. In the comments below, please share any questions that you have, or if you need anything or found this helpful, let me know. Click like and subscribe. That would be awesome for my channel. Thank you so much. And I will see you in my next video that I'm going to post right there. Bye.